Hi, this is Veronica with the Crafty Ladder. This set is the home set for the Apothecary Cabinet. The colors that I'm thinking for this particular set is black. This is apple barrel black and brown oxide. And this also, that one was apple barrel. And this one is folk art, and it is titanium white. So what I'm thinking is that the base color for the H, the O, the background here of the frame for the M, and the E will be in white. The fixtures will be black, so this piece here black, this piece black, the trim black, and this piece black. And the accents for the shade would be brown, the heart would be brown, the M brown, and of course this shade brown. So that's what I'm thinking. Classic colors, farmhouse colors. I would love to do a set for just those of us who love the black and white look. I'd love to do just black and white, and I also want to do a set with yellow as the featured color or the background or base color. So that's to come, hopefully. But for now, let's do this set in tones of, well, not really tones, but I'd like to keep it more of a natural, with a natural vibe, and of course that farmhouse look, the classic look that everybody loves. So white, black, and brown for this particular set. So let's get started with that. I have no need for a huge palette or anything. We're just going to use a little bit of paint here. I'm primarily going to use wipies, baby wipes, but I will bring in probably a couple of detail brushes for these smaller pieces here. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with the white. So we just need a little bit, and this is titanium white. I guess I didn't shake that one enough. It's still a little, dried up at the tip there. We don't need much. Well, let's start with that. And as usual, I have a couple of wipes cut up here. I need a couple of bigger pieces. I just like to keep them in a clear container. That keeps them moist for the most part while I'm working. And if they start to dry up, just use a mister. Give them a couple of squirts. That just keeps them moist. And set that off to the side. So this home set is intended for use with the Apothecary Cabinet. So most of the pieces are small. These I call the individual letters, which each set for the Apothecary Cabinet will have individual letters. And I try to get my little creative groove going. So this particular one, these come in, and I'm thinking that's about 2 1/4 or so that you have an understanding that these pieces are not huge. So maybe almost 2 inches there. So let's go ahead and hit these with some white. Yes, as I was saying, most of the pieces are, or all of the pieces are designed for the Apothecary Cabinet drawers. So they're not gigantic. You're not going to find very many that are taller than about 3 1/2 inches or so. You can make quick work. Just take a little peek around the sides. Looks pretty good. Just try and get most of the excess off of that. You don't have to be too careful with not getting white on the little hanging part there of the heart, because it's going to be covered with this overlay here. I'm thinking it's probably going to need a second coat. You know, white, it's, you know, some of them can be pretty transparent. This one is pretty good, but I still think that I did not base coat these pieces, so the wood is drinking up the paint. Should have taken a little peek around the sides just to make sure. Looks pretty good. And this one, we want to target the area here that's inside, but we're going to cover it with the inlay. I'm sorry, the inlay, which is the M, and also these little black pieces that will be trimming the frame. So it doesn't require perfection. You just need to get in there. I try and stay going the same direction. My brain doesn't always stay on that, but that's always my intention when I start painting. Yeah, so for this collection I was hoping to stay, or this set actually, I was hoping to stay with some natural colors. I want to bring in some sage, and I guess when I designed it I included 3 candles you'll see in the set. One is lavender, one is vanilla, and one is sage. So I was kind of thinking of those colors as my guide when deciding what direction to take this particular set in. So we're looking at some light greens, some very light blues, pale colors, just relaxing when you think of your home. Sometimes it's not always the direction you want to take things. Maybe it's a party night and bright colors. Maybe you're in party modes from time to time, and so you're not really thinking of just some muted colors. But during those occasions when you want to just mellow out and relax, I think the natural elements that are more neutral, those work really well to kind of set that vibe for you. So it would be, I think, a nice option. So I'm going to look around the sides. Did I forget to do that with the frame here? Oh, well, I didn't need to worry about the edges, so I tried to steer clear. Looks pretty good. I think I got, just from my finger, I got a little bit of a little smudge there. Alright, so I think they're still a little too transparent. You can really see with the M, it looks a little transparent. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it one more time. I think I need a little bit more paint. Again, this is Folk Art Titanium White. Oof, got too much there, did not need that much. Gave it a little too much muscle on that squeeze. Now for these individual letters, I'm not going to do any additional accents to them. I think they're going to look terrific. As we paint them up. I think they're going to look terrific with just the little light fixtures, the shades. Kind of setting the stage for the home set. Little bit there on the inside, so let me get another wipe here. As your fingers get dirty, you end up getting the edges unintentionally. I want to still be able to see the outline of that M, because I want it to guide me when I place the actual overlay on top. I don't want to struggle with getting it centered, so I still want to be able to see it. Really, I just want the interior part to be white. That's pretty good. I really love that titanium white because it's just a bright, vibrant white, and it is saturated. But when you're using a wipe, since there's moisture in this, it makes a color more transparent. And as I mentioned, since I did not base coat got a little bit on the edge there. Since I did not base coat the pieces, the wood is really thirsty, and since it's porous, it's drinking up that paint. And where you'd think that you'd get a pretty solid opaque color, you're getting some transparency. So that's why we need that second coat. Pretty good. I'm just going to do a double check along the edges, make sure I didn't get any smudges or anything on there. Looks good. Looks good. Alright. And yeah, in case you haven't watched my videos when I'm painting, I do like to use a Lazy Susan. I just find that it helps me maneuver the pieces without really having to kind of twist my hand or anything. So I'm just doing a little cleanup on my fingers because I don't want to carry that white paint over to the other pieces. And yeah, painting usually has that ugly stage at the beginning where you're like, I don't know if that's going to look so great. But as you go through, a little magic happens. Okay, so now this is the apple barrel black, and we only need a little bit. It is just black. Alright, so I think I'm going to use a detail brush for this one. And these are just small detail brushes from Hobby Lobby. Had them for a couple of years and they've lasted, so I just want to come in and get these. You can see why it would not be a good idea to try and do this part with a wipey. You know what I am going to do is take what I like to use is Crayola markers because they're water-based, and we're not doing something that's going to be, this is just to guide me. It's giving me a guide mark so that I can stay in that area. I'm not using this as a substitute for a paint pen because it's not an acrylic pen, it's just a water-based pen. And you know, if you add water to this, it'll come off. So I'm just using this to guide me to set that line where I need it to be. And this particular piece also is going to need that little guide mark. We'll just put that little crease in there. It's just going to guide me. Actually, I put that on the wrong thing, didn't I? It should be in the overlay. For these little accent pieces, I want the black to start there. The shade's going to be brown. So let me just say that again. I'm just using these to guide me. The tracing that I'm doing with, or the outline that I'm doing with the Crayola marker, because these are just water-based markers. They would function like a watercolor pencil, except the watercolor pencil you have to worry about sharpening, and they also have a blunt edge most of the time, so, or a rounded edge, and so the line is darker. These are fine point Crayola markers, and so they're pretty thin, and so it allows you to go in there and just, I'm putting in my outline, kind of like when you're, you know, coloring with a coloring in a coloring book. They you want to put a little outline along the image to help you guide you as you paint or as you color. Same principle here. And I think I'll be pretty good at stopping there with this one. I didn't put a little guide mark, but here I will. Now what I'll do is I am going over that outline that I did with the Crayola marker. I'm going over it with the paint. And so there's no worry that that marker will come off, because it's now covered with paint. And since it's water-based and acrylic paint is also water-based, there's no worries there. Alright, it's already bringing a little bit of life to it. What I said was that I should have put that little mark here. You know, with this one I think I'm going to wait to do the brown, and then I'll come back and do the little black accent there. Because what I'm finding is that the wood is really drinking up the paint, and it'll bleed. So I don't want I can see that happened here, so a good thing I tried it there first. I planned that, right? It was not a mistake. I planned that. And so I can see that it kind of bled, and we don't want that on the piece, so it's best to go ahead and do the brown first, and then I'll come in and do the black. And that brown paint, once it's there, should act as a little dam so that the black paint won't bleed into it. At least that's what I'm hoping. That's what usually happens. So that looks pretty good. Happy with that. And again, I did the same thing. Now, this does not need to be painted, but because sometimes when you put an overlay on top of the wood, you can see a little shadow. I don't want the natural beige color or tan color of the wood to come through. I want to make sure that you can only see black. So and the black usually is pretty saturated, so it usually doesn't need 2 coats, but right here I could see that it did need it. Now, what I was talking about was that when you put a piece of wood, if, let's say I had left that bare, when you put it on, when I glue the piece on, there's a chance that you'll be able to see some of that on the side, just peeking through like that, and it doesn't look that great. So if you paint it black, then no worries. You can go ahead and see that when you overlay it, it'll cover it. It should take care of it, no problem. So okay, just make sure I have this the right direction on this one. It's the shadow beneath the overlay, and the shadow should be dark. Well, this beautiful birch wood is not dark. It's that tan beige color. Alright, looking good. Now these pieces are supposed to be black as well. And I just want to make sure I have the right, this is the, I think the short edge. So this one goes here. I want to make sure I paint the right edge, the right side. This is a long piece. This is a shorter piece. Long piece. Okay. I did kind of test a few of the brown paints to see which shade I was going to go with. You know, with browns, well, most of the colors, there's so many variations, and I wanted to avoid getting a brown that looks kind of has that orange hue. So, and I didn't want a really chocolate brown either. So something a little bit more natural. So the one that I went with is the brown oxide. And I still hopefully want some of that grain to come through, the wood grain. So hopefully we'll get that accomplished. And I was wondering or thinking about doing with the light, the little fixtures, you know how most of your, or a lot of fixtures, they're, the pipe or the housing is metallic. And, well, in real life, of course, but we're in pretend world here. Usually metallic. So I kind of went back and forth. Should it be silver? Should it be chrome? Now I am going with brown on the shades, which I just, you know, that just takes me back to something like a rust colored brown. I didn't want to go with black and silver because that would just change the entire dynamic there of the color story. Now for these I could have totally used a wipey. But since I already had the paintbrush ready, just continuing on with that. Yeah, so with each Apothecary Cabinet set, I wanted to include a little bit of creativity with the individual letters. So with this one I actually have another design with leaves and with leaves that come off of the H, and I liked it, but since I really didn't integrate plants in the whole set, it felt a little off to me. So I decided to come up with something a little bit different. And you kind of think, you know, the way that I was going down that process was you're thinking about some of the features that your home has. What elements could I bring into this little set that are just reminders of home? So you fill apothecary cabinets with such, you know, wonderful items, memorabilia, souvenirs, whatchamacallits that you don't know where to put. So you might have a little catch-all drawer, but with apothecary cabinets there are a lot of drawers to catch things. Almost done. And it'll come together pretty quickly. So we're going to keep this little paintbrush handy. Now we need brown. You know what, I'm just going to go ahead and set this in the, I don't want to put it in the water well, so what I did was I got a couple of paper Dixie cups ready earlier. But I already used them, so I'm just adding some water into the paper cups. And I don't know if you can, yeah, you can tell. It's just a little bit of water. I'm going to keep that little brush ready and waiting for me. So we need a couple of wipies. And I always try and keep one off to the side because for cleanup. So we're ready for that brown. And the idea again here is to, I don't think I shook this one up. The idea here is, whoosh, somehow that was coming loose. Good thing we didn't have a huge accident. Been there, done that. So the idea here is to still try and see the wood grain coming through. Should only need a little bit, so let's take a look and see. Kind of dab some of that off. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you don't really need to paint this part, but it's so pale, we don't want any of the edges coming through. And it serves as a little test piece. Oh, and I really do like it. I think it looks fantastic. I still want some of that grain to come through. So now that's the shadow for this piece. So once we get this piece on there, you shouldn't see any of the pale brown coming through. You know, and if you find that you've got the color on there and it looks a little bit darker than you wanted, you can always take a little wipey and just go over it, and it'll take some of that color off. Don't wait too long though, because you know how quickly the paint dries since it's water based. And I'm in Texas. The room here is hot, so it's not super hot in here, but I haven't checked lately. It's probably 88 or so. So that just means that it'll dry up. That one came out a little bit darker than I wanted, so I'm going to go in with that little spare wipey and try and take some of that off. There you go. I mentioned, I want it brown, but I really don't want it like a chocolate dark brown. I wanted something a little bit lighter. I don't want to make that same mistake again. So let's color in that shadow for the little backer area here. It's really just the edges that need to get it. Alright, now here's that M. Loving it. I think it adds some interest. It just doesn't look as flat, which is great. I'm taking that wipey again that I used a little earlier. I'm going to take some of that off in spots. Seeing that grain coming through, you've got some areas that are a little bit darker, some areas, it's like instant highlighting, shading. Highlighting, giving your a little bit of brightness, and then shading, giving it that little bit of darkness, you know, instead of just being flat paint. And every time I talk about that, I'm reminded of this one time I went to JCPenney's to get my hair done. Speaking of stories and getting off the subject, but I went to get my hair done, and the lady there, I would always go to the same lady, and I don't go to the hairdresser often because it's super expensive, and I've always had long hair, and so you're talking usually $130, and so I might go twice a year, and that's some years I don't even go. So it's just something hits me, and you want, you know what I mean. Sometimes you just need a little something, and you feel like you want to get something done. And I usually get layers. I always get the same thing. But anyways, this lady, since I don't go that often, I don't know. I haven't gone, you know, after the pandemic and everything. It's like, so what we're talking of 2 years of us being in recovery at this point from that. So I haven't gone. I've got that little area there. It's really light. I'm not loving it. It's like a little bleached area. It's just the natural wood. That's what's happening with it, but that's why I'm trying to hit it. And anyway, I don't know if she remembers me or not, so she doesn't call me by name. I know her name. But anyways, I haven't been there in over 2 years. But before that, there was one and she has really serious highlights in her hair. All this because I was talking about highlighting with paint and shading. So now I'm going to come in with the black. Back to my story. Not much of a story, but anyway. She's got super these really dramatic highlights in her hair, and that's not really, I mean, that's not my style. For some people, I totally love how it looks, so it's a look that I like. It's just not a style that I like. And she was really pushing them on me, and I was like, she asked me if I wanted highlights. I guess she didn't like my natural hair color, which my hair's dark brown, or something. I don't know what it was. Maybe there was some kind of promotion she was trying to get in. I have no idea. So she kept pushing the highlights on me, and she's asking me if I want them. That was the first thing, and then I told her no, and she keeps going. And so I'm gonna say that on her, to look for her, you know, and great. If that empowers her, fantastic. It's not a look I particularly liked on her. They were really dramatic. kind of blonde against a real dark, a deep dark brown. And so, I don't know, it just wasn't doing it for me. So, she kept asking me, and then finally she's wanting to know. And I'm just trying to avoid, the issue. To me, it doesn't look natural. It doesn't look like natural highlights. For some people, you can tell the hairdresser just did amazing work. And let me go ahead and do the shadows here, get some black on there and get some brown, so we don't have any issue with that bare wood coming through or the white. For some people it just doesn't look natural, but for some it does. The hairdresser, I guess, takes their time really going in there and piecing out I've seen it done. You sit in a hairdresser's place for more than 15 minutes and you're going to see somebody getting highlights, so you see kind of the process, how they work it through. So they take their time, they take out so many pieces to make sure, and whatever magic they work that magic, and it just looks fabulous. But I kept thinking, I don't want to look like, that's not a look that I want, lady. It's just, so I told her, I said, I just don't think that they look natural. And without going into the whole explanation of some people do, for some people it does, and all of that, and she just kind of like so sorry about that. Guess who that was? It was Guillermo calling me from the living room. Before I started here, I called him and told him that I was going to do a video, so he didn't need to give me a call, because he always calls me when he's coming home from work. And I said, you don't need to call me unless it's an emergency, because I'm going to do a little video. And he said, okay. So then right now the phone rings and I'm like, oh my gosh, hope there's not an emergency. Well, he was in the living room, and he made it in the house, but we have another like security door, and it has some glass panels, so it's got a latch, and so I had it locked with the latch, and so he can't unlock the latch. And it's got glass panels. I say that because Blackie was just watching him. Blackie's laying there on his side. You know how dogs are. So watching him, and Willie said, I was waiting. I knew you were doing the video. I didn't want to interrupt, but he'd already been waiting over 15 minutes, and he was just hoping that one of the dogs would hear. I said, why didn't you knock? And he said, I did knock. Remember, get this, he's already inside the house. It's another security door that we have. So he's already inside the house, and he said, I even got started on dinner and everything, and he had the TV on in there and going, and poor guy, I mean, you get home from work, you don't really want to have to deal with that. And so it was funny, because he says, I did knock, hoping that one of the dogs would hear, and then they would just bark, and then you'd kind of come and check what's going on, why are they barking. But no. So Blackie's just laying there on his side, watching him through the glass. And so we're ready for glue up, I think. All right, let me get the glue. And so what I'm using here is a Type Bond Quick and Thick. As I've mentioned to you before, this was a recommendation from the ladies over at Peach and Valley, Rhonda and Casey, mother and daughter team. So give them a follow over on Facebook. That's Peach and Valley. And well, that was funny. I said, well, I'll just explain. I said, I've been doing the little video, yeah, but we'll just explain exactly what happened there. So yeah, Goldie didn't bark. Goldie never came out of the room to bark. She's over there taking a long siesta. And Blackie did come out of the room, out of one of the rooms. They take naps in all different kinds of places in the house, and usually any little sound they start raising a ruckus. But I guess Goldie didn't hear, or she's exhausted with the heat, or I have no idea. And Blackie did hear, but he just decided that everything was normal. It was just Willie at the door, so So I go out and I tell him, well, why didn't you bark, Blackie? And he turns over, so of course on his back, giving his chest up. I call it the cucaracha, his little cucaracha pose. And they flip over and start flailing their legs in the air, because that's for Blackie, that's his indication that he wants to be rubbed. He wants a chest rub. Guy doesn't have a belly, he's thin. So he likes to get his chest rubbed. Woo, that's looking nice. Nice, nice. I love that. So that's the tail of the ringing phone. So back to my hairdresser story. I didn't forget. Anyways, because I felt bad. I mean, she's asking me, the hairdresser's asking me, you know, well, why don't I want highlights? And just, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe she thought my hair color was just too blah, one color, one shade, which it isn't. It's got gray hairs running through it, and you know, by my age, it's not a solid color anymore. So I don't know. And yeah, I was getting my hair colored, but my usual color, just a brown color. So I guess she wanted to add some additional dimension to it or something. And as I said, don't get me wrong, I think that if that's the look you're going for, just an extreme difference between the highlights that you have and your other base color, that's great, you know, to each his own. But it's just not. And then some, I just think that a wonderful job is done, and it looks fantastic. The blending is really great, and it looks really natural, like the sun hitting your hair, and you see natural tones of lightness and in the darker areas. So it looks fantastic. Doesn't that look pretty? Just like that, you know, different shading and different highlight areas. Okay. Now, I think I'm going to put the M first and then put the border around. But anyways, I haven't gone back to her, of course, you know. For one thing, I didn't go regularly. It's just too expensive. But that's another thing. She probably won't remember. Anyways, how did I get out of that conversation? I have no, I mean, because then she did mention, you know, I said that it just didn't look natural, and she said, what do you mean? I don't remember exactly how that conversation went, but it was awkward for me, you know, because yeah, she was an example that to me just didn't look natural, and that's not the look that I like. And you kind of feel a little bit pressured, like they're wanting to take you in a direction you don't want to go. So we moved on from that at some point, and I just ended up with the natural hair color. And of course, a couple of bottles of shampoo, super expensive shampoo and super expensive conditioner. You know how that goes. I don't know, do you fall for the same things that I do? When you go to the hairdresser, you got to get the shampoo. It usually smells fantastic, and then your hair looks fantastic, and you think you need that product to make your hair look fantastic. Of course, you can never get it to look the same once you're at home. And my hair's just straight, but when they blow it out, when they blow dry it, and just looks fantastic. They do some kind of magic. So let me know in the comments, or send me a message. Do you fall for that too? Do you end up with a bunch of products that you probably don't need? When you go to the hairdresser. You know what? I should have painted those little trim pieces black, and I better go back and do that. So it's okay. This will be fine. Waiting for me. The glue will dry up, but I'll just add another little layer of glue and it should be fine. Again, this is the shadow behind these pieces, and since it's white or this natural wood, it'll show up behind the border, the frame, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to come in with some black, hit those edges really quick, and get it in. I don't know if you can hear, you probably can't hear that. That's Goldie. The water bowl's on the other side of my desk here, so that's the Goldie girl. Man, she's thirsty. You thirsty, pretty? Oh, they're both here. Hey, Fuller, you want to drink water? Yeah, they're funny. I usually hear faintest noises. But somehow I'm trying to get away with that little black that's left. It's dry though, so it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Yeah, and they end up raising a ruckus. A little bit too crazy with the black and got that edge there. So I think it'll be okay, but yeah, I think that little score line saved it. But I'm going to need a little bit more black. Just a touch. Please do let me know if you got to this point and you heard the crazy story of Willie calling me from the living room. But you know, when you get that, when the phone rings and you just, after you've said don't call me unless it's an emergency, it's like your heart stops, like it's not an emergency. Alright, we got it. You got to give that a little bit of time to dry, so go ahead and glue up this little piece here. So this glue is fantastic because it really does give you some time before it sets up completely. So you can move the piece if you need to. It looks great. It does dry clear, which is another wonderful thing about it, especially if you get some squeeze out and you get some of the glue that comes out from the edge. You just got to be careful since it needs a little, it does give you some time for it to set up. That means if you hit it or bang it or move it, somehow it's going to move on you. So you just want to be careful as you set it down and where you set it so you don't bump it. And all right, I'm gonna hit these little pieces, or this frame actually. The pieces should be ready to go, but I'm gonna hit the frame with a little bit of air. Checking to make sure that which side goes where. That's Blackie. Go further. Drinking your water. I just kind of kept that habit up of putting the water bowl close to where I can monitor because we had Goldie go through a period there. I probably put too much glue there, but oh well. We went through a period there where Goldie had was getting periodic UTIs, urinary tract infections, and so we needed to pay attention to the water intake and try and encourage her to drink water. And so we put a water bowl here close to me, and it's just stayed there since. Thank the good Lord she doesn't have them like she used to. Didn't even know that was a thing. For dogs anyway. We're almost done. Now, of course, before I start doing anything with the pieces, even just packing them up, whether you are a maker and you make some for customers, or if you make them for family or friends, or you're making them for yourself, you don't want to pack them and put them away. You need to give the glue some time to cure, so a good 24 hours. You want that frame to come together so that the mitered edges come together. Oof. Too much muscle in that one. Top looks great. It's the bottom that I feel like needs a little bit of it. There. Need a little bit of straightening. And I'm just going to get a wipey and run it along. First I'm going to clean my fingers up because I've got glue everywhere. Now it does dry clear, but if you've got some excess, sometimes I notice that depending on how much glue seeps out, that it might leave a sheen. So you don't want that. So even though it dries clear, there's a little bit of a sheen to it. So if you can get it off, then do so. I'm taking my nail and scraping. I got a little bit of glue. I had it on my finger and I got a little bit of glue, so I was holding that little trim piece. So I am going to get that little detail brush and get a little bit of, where's that wet black paint? There it is. And come in and go over that again. Might as well do the whole thing. It looks so good. Getting the edges because the edge of the frame peeks out a little bit. Okey-dokes. Now let's put the pieces together, and I'm just going to rinse my brush out a little bit before I go wash it. And I'm going to clean my fingers again because as usual you get paint where you don't think. At this point my little toe probably has paint on it. You know how that goes. You don't know. It's like sand at the beach. It gets everywhere. Sometimes with paint you're like, how in the world did I get paint there? And then you end up getting it on pieces that you don't want to have paint. So we've got the H, the O, the M, and the E. And I think they look great. So that's kind of setting the stage for the all the pieces in the set. I think that we might need a little bit of shading on these. So I can see some darkness on the edges, which I love. So I think I might add a little bit of shading around the trim pieces. So let's do that now. We can get that accomplished with a wipey pretty quickly. And then we'll call this one done. Going to go along the edges. Of course, I could bring out my shader brush and do it with a paintbrush, but why? If you've got a wipey here handy, I'm going to add a little bit of brown into some areas here. Gives it a little bit more contrast. a little too bright now. I'm sorry, a little too dark in the center, so I'm going to take some of that off. There we go. And there we go. All right. So that is home from the individual letters from the Apothecary Cabinet home set. So please give me a holler if you have any questions. I'm Veronica with The Crafty Ladder. You can send me an email to thecraftyladder@gmail.com, or you can find me over on Facebook. Send me a direct message and holler at me on Facebook. And if you don't follow us there, please do so. All right, thanks so much for joining me, and please let me know if you heard the crazy story about Willie calling me from from the living room. That's going to be one to remember. All right, thanks so much. We'll catch you for the next one, and make sure that you get the other sets for the home, the other painting tutorials for the home set. So I'm excited about doing the keys and the candles and, you know, all of the other tags and everything. So be sure to join me for that. All right, thanks so much. Bye.